The WNBA world was already on fire. Caitlin Clark had just been struck in the throat by Alyssa Thomas. The refs missed it live. The league suspended Thomas for one game. Social media erupted. Death threats followed. Clark finally broke her silence, calling for better officiating and condemning the hate. The story had everything: drama, controversy, and a league at a crossroads. Then Donald Trump stepped in. On July 6, 2026, the U.S. president was addressing the media about a completely different topic: the red card suspension of U.S. soccer star Flagrant. But when asked about his intervention in that case, Trump pivoted. He brought up Caitlin Clark, and what he said sent shockwaves through the basketball world. "I thought you're young, wonderful basketball player, Caitlin Clark. I thought she was treated rather rough, if you want to know the truth," Trump said. "That was a much different kind of an event. That was a pretty bad event." Just like that, the most powerful man in the world had inserted himself into the WNBA's biggest controversy. The political and sports worlds collided in a way no one saw coming. But this wasn't just a casual comment. This was the culmination of weeks of tension. A former Trump aide had already called for a federal probe into Clark's treatment. Stephen A. Smith had warned the WNBA that Trump might get involved. And now he had. Today, we're breaking down everything Trump said, why he said it, and what this means for the WNBA, for Caitlin Clark, and for the future of women's basketball. Buckle up, because this story just got a whole lot bigger. Trump's full statement, what he said, and when he said it. The date was July 6, 2026. President Donald Trump was holding a media availability, fielding questions from reporters on a range of topics. One of the key issues on the agenda was the red card suspension of U.S. forward Flagrant, which Trump had personally intervened to help reverse, allowing Balogun to play in a World Cup match against Belgium. But during his answer about why Balogun should not have received a red card, Trump took an unexpected detour. He alluded to the Thomas-Clark play, which had taken place on June 24, nearly 2 weeks earlier. "I thought you're young, wonderful basketball player, Caitlin Clark. I thought she was treated rather rough, if you want to know the truth," Trump said. He didn't stop there. He emphasized the severity of what he had witnessed. That was a much different kind of an event. That was a pretty bad event. Trump's comments were brief, but pointed. He didn't mention Alyssa Thomas by name. He didn't call for specific action, but his words carried weight. The President of the United States had just called out the treatment of Caitlin Clark as rather rough and described the incident as a pretty bad event. For context, Trump was speaking just 3 days after Clark herself had addressed the media on July 3rd. Clark had made it clear she was ready for the discourse around the foul to be over, suggesting that lingering on it was a disservice to the rest of the league. "There's so much amazing talent, and there's so many amazing players that are playing at an incredibly high rate," Clark had said. "I think it's all of our jobs to help refocus the narratives. We can do better at that, and I think it'll help our great game grow a lot more." Trump's comments, coming just days after Clark's plea to move on, reignited the controversy. The president had effectively done the opposite of what Clark had asked. Instead of letting the narrative fade, he had brought it back into the national spotlight. But Trump's comments didn't come out of nowhere. They were the culmination of weeks of growing political tension around Clark and the WNBA. And to understand why Trump spoke up, we need to look at the context. The backstory, how we got to this moment. To understand why Donald Trump weighed in on the Caitlin Clark foul controversy, we need to rewind to June 24, 2026, the night everything changed. The incident. The Indiana Fever were hosting the Phoenix Mercury at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. In the second quarter, Caitlin Clark dove for a loose ball and fell near the free throw line. Alyssa Thomas, the Mercury's 6-time All-Star forward, fell on top of her. As Thomas attempted to get up, her closed fist made contact with Clark's throat area. The referees missed it completely. No whistle. No foul call. Play continued. But the WNBA office was watching. They reviewed the footage and determined that Thomas had acted recklessly and had committed a non-basketball act. The play was retroactively upgraded to a flagrant foul 2, the most severe penalty in the WNBA rulebook. Thomas was suspended for 1 game and fined $1,000. The fallout. The controversy exploded. Social media was flooded with outrage. Some called for Thomas to be banned indefinitely. Others accused the league of protecting certain players while ignoring others. The discourse became toxic divisive, and dangerous. Thomas later revealed that she and her Mercury teammates had been subjected to racial harassment and death threats. Her phone number and address were allegedly leaked online. Clark's response. For 9 days, Caitlin Clark said nothing. Then, on July 3rd, she finally spoke. She addressed the foul directly, called for better officiating, condemned the hate directed at Thomas, and urged the media to move on. I did think it was a flagrant foul. Our reffing just needs to be better, Clark said. But she also made it clear she wanted the narrative to shift. I turn on the TV Sunday, the game was on Wednesday, and that's all people are talking about. And I feel like that's just a real disservice to our league. The political undercurrent. Even before Trump spoke, politics had already entered the conversation. A former Trump aide, Sean McLean, had called for federal intervention into what he described as the WNBA's failure to protect Caitlin Clark from overly aggressive treatment. McLean suggested that Clark's targeting may reflect a culture of disparate treatment, and the evidence provides reasonable cause for a federal probe into potential civil rights violations. ESPN analyst Stephen A. Smith had also warned that Trump might get involved. The league has fostered a hostile workplace for Ms. Clark through excessive fouling, targeting, and hostile comments from other players and owners, Smith said. And then there was the White House's viral meme. The official White House X account had shared a video of WNBA star Sophie Cunningham pointing dramatically at an opponent, cutting to Trump pointing into a camera and giving a thumbs up. The meme had gone viral, with fans and celebrities posting their own versions. Cunningham, when asked about the White House's involvement, said she didn't really think twice about it. I think everyone around the world is posting it. Every company has done it. They're just the one to also get on board. But the meme was a sign that the Trump administration was paying attention to the WNBA, and it was only a matter of time before Trump himself weighed in. The political reaction, support, criticism, and everything in between. Trump's comments on Caitlin Clark didn't happen in a vacuum. They triggered a wave of reactions from across the political and sports spectrum. The supporters. Trump's base quickly rallied behind his comments. Conservative commentators and fans praised the president for speaking out against what they saw as unfair treatment of Clark. Some framed it as Trump defending a young, white female athlete against a league they perceived as hostile to her. The former Trump aide who had called for a federal probe saw his arguments validated. The president had now publicly acknowledged the incident, lending credibility to the idea that Clark's treatment was a matter of national concern. The critics. On the other side, critics accused Trump of exploiting the controversy for political gain. Some pointed out that Trump had a history of weighing in on sports issues to appeal to his base. Others noted that Trump's comments came just days after Clark herself had asked the media to move on. Ex-ESPN analyst Jemele Hill had previously suggested that Trump loves exploiting white grievance. Critics argued that his comments on Clark were another example of this pattern. The WNBA's response. The WNBA had already condemned the hate directed at Thomas and other players. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert released a statement saying, "The WNBA vehemently condemns any and all forms of hate. The safety and well-being of everyone in our community is always the league's top priority." But the league had not commented on Trump's remarks directly. Some analysts suggested that the WNBA was in a difficult position. Engaging with the president's comments could politicize the issue further. Ignoring them could be seen as disrespectful. The player's perspective. Clark herself had not responded to Trump's comments at the time of this writing, but her previous statements suggested she wanted the focus to be on basketball, not politics. Thomas, who had been the target of death threats, had not commented on Trump's remarks either. She had previously called for more player safety and protections, urging Commissioner Engelbert to take a stand. Sophie Cunningham, whose viral meme had been shared by the White House, remained unfazed. "I didn't really think twice about it," she said. "I think they're just another group who is posting about it." The media's role. Trump's comments reignited media coverage of the Thomas Clark incident, exactly what Clark had hoped to avoid. Some journalists criticized Trump for inserting himself into a sports controversy. Others argued that the president had every right to speak his mind. The debate over the media's role in amplifying the controversy continued. Clark had called the coverage a disservice to the league. Trump's comments ensured that the story would dominate headlines for at least another news cycle. The broader implications, what this means for the WNBA. Donald Trump's comments on Caitlin Clark are about more than just one play or one player. They represent a turning point for the WNBA, a moment when the league's growing popularity intersected with the nation's political divide. The politicization of the WNBA. The WNBA has always been a politically active league. Players have spoken out on social justice issues, LGBTQ+ rights, and racial equality. The league has embraced its role as a platform for activism. But Trump's comments mark the first time a sitting U.S. president has weighed in on a WNBA controversy. This changes the dynamic. The league can no longer avoid the political spotlight. Every controversy, every foul, every dispute will now be viewed through a political lens. Some see this as a threat. Others see it as an opportunity. The WNBA's growing popularity means it will attract more attention, including from politicians. How the league navigates this new reality will define its future. The civil rights debate. The former Trump aide's call for a federal probe into Clark's treatment raised eyebrows across the sports world. The idea that Clark's civil rights were being violated because of the fouls she receives in the WNBA seemed far-fetched to some. But others took the argument seriously. They pointed to the pattern of rough play Clark has faced since entering the league. From Chindi Carter's hip check to Angel Reese's hit to the head to Alyssa Thomas's throat punch, Clark has been the target of numerous controversial fouls. The question is whether this pattern reflects a culture of disparate treatment, as McLean suggested. Critics argue that Clark is simply a high-profile player who draws fouls because of her aggressive style of play. Supporters argue that the league has failed to protect her because of her race and her politics. The debate is unlikely to be resolved anytime soon. But Trump's comments have given it new life. The impact on players. The most immediate impact of Trump's comments may be on the players themselves. Clark, Thomas, and others have already faced intense scrutiny. Now they have to deal with the added pressure of political attention. Clark has shown remarkable poise in handling the controversy. She condemned the hate directed at Thomas. She called for better officiating. She urged the media to move on. She has done everything right. But the constant attention takes a toll. Clark admitted as much when she said, "I'm not a robot. I have emotions. I have feelings. I'm 24 years old trying to navigate a lot. There are times where it's hard." Thomas has also shown resilience. Despite facing death threats and racial abuse, she has continued to play at a high level. She has called for more player safety and protections. Both players deserve credit for how they've handled the situation. But the question remains, how much more can they take? What's next? The road ahead for Clark, Thomas, and the WNBA. The story is far from over. Trump's comments have added a new layer of complexity to an already complicated situation. Here's what to watch for in the coming days and weeks. The rematch. The Fever and the Mercury are scheduled to face each other again on July 9th in Phoenix. The rematch was already one of the most anticipated games of the season. Now, with Trump's comments hanging over it, the stakes are even higher. Will there be tension between Clark and Thomas? Will the referees be under extra scrutiny? Will the game descend into chaos? Or will both teams rise above the controversy and let their basketball do the talking? Clark has already set the tone. She has called for the narrative to move on. She has condemned the hate. She has demanded better officiating. Now, it's up to everyone else to follow her lead. The league's response. The WNBA must now decide how to move forward. Will the league invest more in officiating? Will it take stronger action against dangerous plays? Will it do more to protect players from online abuse? Clark has made her position clear. She wants the league to do better, and she's not afraid to say so. Overall, the league has to do better. We have to invest in those areas. The technology can get better. We can treat the referees a little bit better. Pay them like they're full-time employees. The WNBA has a choice to make. It can ignore the criticism and hope the controversy fades. Or it can take meaningful action to address the concerns raised by players, fans, and now the President of the United States. The political fallout. Trump's comments are unlikely to be the last word on the subject. Other politicians may weigh in. The debate over Clark's treatment could become a campaign issue. The WNBA could find itself at the center of a political firestorm. Some analysts have suggested that Trump's comments were calculated to appeal to his base. Others believe he genuinely cares about Clark's well-being. Whatever the motivation, the result is the same. The WNBA is now a political battleground. The players' well-being. Above all, the focus should be on the players. Clark, Thomas, and others have endured intense scrutiny, online abuse, and physical punishment. They deserve better. Clark has shown remarkable leadership throughout the controversy. She has stood up for herself without tearing others down. She has called for accountability while showing compassion. She has set a new standard for how athletes can navigate controversy. Thomas has also shown grace under pressure. Despite facing death threats and racial abuse, she has continued to play with passion and intensity. She has called for more player safety and protections. Both players deserve our respect, and both deserve a league that protects them. The future of the WNBA. The WNBA is at a crossroads. The league is more popular than ever, thanks in large part to players like Clark. But that popularity comes with challenges. Increased scrutiny, toxic fan behavior, and media sensationalism are all part of the package. How the league handles this moment will define its future. Will it rise to the occasion? Will it protect its players? Will it maintain its integrity? The answers to those questions are still unwritten. But one thing is clear: the world is watching, and the stakes have never been higher.